the Inter-University Center for Alternative Economics to organize such an important topic, as well as a lecture on such an important issue which is happening in the country, a public lecture on farmers' question. Indeed, this is in collaboration with the Kochi Collective, a friend circle who are actually organizing different issues on alternative discourse on development and other issues. And we are very happy that we are jointly organizing this. And the objective of our center is actually to work on such alternative approaches in economics and development. So we are very glad to have this session, and indeed we got a very eminent personalities in earlier lectures also, like Dr. Vijoo today we got. So we are very fortunate to have him today. And this is indeed the 19th lecture in that row of different, in the last 2 years, we are organizing such lectures. So we are very happy. And this is one of the first public lecture of that kind, which is having a very common, moving from the academic kind of thing. This is also touching upon the current issues in the issue in Indian scenario. So we are very grateful to have such an eminent fellow like Dr. Vijoo. So on behalf of Inter-University Center as well as the Kochi Collective, I am welcoming Dr. Vijoo Krishnan, the All India Joint Secretary of All India Kisan Sabha. So welcome, Dr. Vijoo.
Thank you.
And Vijoo had secured his PhD from SIS School of International Studies, JNU, on agrarian questions, in fact, co-supervised by Professor Utsa Patnaik. And we know Dr. Vijoo for quite a long time. In fact, is a nice person, as well as a very, an interesting human being who is in fact very much committed to the social cause, as well as his activism is in fact in that sense is it's always an inspiring one for all of us as an young student. And I was in different campuses and all. So he was faculty earlier before joining in the All India Kisan Sabha as the joint secretary. He was worked in St. Joseph College and other institution in Northeast, and he was also in fact in the post Gujarat riot 2002. He was one of the member in the fact-finding committee, which was in the name of Sehmat, the Safdar Hashmi Memorial Trust, and he visited along with other friends. He visited in Gujarat, and in fact had a lot of the concealed informations, which in fact brought out by these young researchers of JNU and other institution. And in fact that has made this issue more public. And after that he had a lot of activities, like not only as the AIKS joint secretary and other form, he had been actively involved in different activities. And the recent one is this Kisan Morcha, which was happened in 2019, that is the Bhumi Adhikari Andolan. And in fact, in that also he had a very active role, and many more things. He used to write extensively in the agrarian issues, especially the ASEAN regions, free trade agreements and other issues and all. So as an academic as well as an activist, he's in fact made his own marks in the field. So we are very happy that Dr. Vijoo is today going to speak a little bit, reflect on a little bit on the recent farmers protest, as well as the farm bill. In fact, this is not about a protest. In fact, the farm bills, the 3 farm bills, in fact, had a lot of implication, and that is why the main reason which the farmers in fact protesting. Now, as a formality of welcoming, let me also welcome the members of coordinators of Kochi Collective, Dr. Aparna Ishwaran, Dr. Matthew from MG University, Hamida from Calicut University, Shirin from JNU, and these are the people, in fact, actively coordinates as part of the Kochi Collective. And I also wish to, in fact, welcome my friends, fellow friends, Professor Anita, the professor and head of the Department of Economics, University of Kerala, Manju Dean, and Prasad Shija, professor from our department, Christabel, director, placement cell, and many more who are going to join from the University of Kerala, and of course other students, faculty members, and staff of inter-universities, and Reshma is also there. So then all the fellow participants and students, on behalf of all of us, we are welcoming all of you in one words. So thank you all for being here. And then let me, in fact, also briefly talk about the issues which we are going to discuss today. There are mainly in the as a problem, the concerns of the farmers regarding the three-farm bill is the following. Like at least 5 problems are very, very important one. The first one in that sense is the center-state relation, which has been, in fact, touched upon, or in fact questioned by this very farm bill, and Farm Act. Now, again, it is also made an issue of treating, though it is in fact talks in terms of market, which is the flexibility or the access of market, but in fact this is not talking about an equitable level playing market, rather than it speaks about 2 different type of market, which is in fact sets with the 2 different rules. So at the same time, the concerns, again, it talks about in terms of fragmented market. When you say about your market is, well and good to make the farmers to access, having better access and all, despite all that fact, it is in fact a fragmented market structure, and it is also generate issues of in fact the bias prominence in the form of the agribusiness, and the big corporates are going to play a crucial role in that. So these are the things which in fact made the farmers really come out and protest against this farm bill. And it is nothing trivial. This is very important, and many times we feel that why people are agitating against this kind of thing. So these are the concerns which really we need to address, and that was never happened in this particular case. And in the previous years and all, when the government had the similar issue, though, but they were actually reluctant to have this sort of legislation which is going to happen very soon or so. So they are not accepting it. So with that point, and then there is no equal playground between the farmers, the sellers, as well as the buyers in that context. So these are the issues, in fact, mainly triggered by the farmers to basically come out, and I'm not actually going to speak much on this fact. And the issues of MSP and the other thing which was the farmers trying to, highlight, are very, very important, because when all this has been actually read together, then the rights of the farmers as well as their minimum, their life itself is maybe, for at least for the marginal and the small farmers, are going to be in trouble. Therefore, the protest of the farmers in that sense is very legitimate, as well as we need to basically see what is actually an actress, as well as a person who is in fact talks about, as well as repeatedly represents in the visual media, as well as like Vijoo, who can in fact reflect a bit more, as well as the current situation and how the government is in fact treats such an issue. And with this, let me conclude my introductory remark, and let me invite Dr. Vijoo to reflect on this. Thank you.
If I may briefly intervene, please put all the audio and video in mute mode except Comrade Vijoo's, and please type in any chat line as it comes, your queries. Thank you.
Thank you, Siddiq. I find a lot of friends on the in the Google Meet. Also, my uh, Professor Ayan Mukherjee also I could see. I thank Kochi Collective and the Inter-University Center for Alternative Economics, University of Kerala, for giving me this opportunity to speak to all of you on the ongoing protests by farmers, the issues involved, and what has led to these protests of such an unprecedented nature, and what has made it a historic protest in last many decades. Firstly, I think we need to go into a little back into 2014 elections, when Narendra Modi and the BJP were facing the elections in 2014. There was already an agrarian crisis. Farm incomes were low, and farmer suicides were also quite high due to the uh, indebtedness because of the policies that have been implemented by different governments over time. Mr. Modi and the BJP touched the pulse of the farmers at that time and made very attractive promises, which raised hopes in the minds of farmers, agriculture workers, and workers. In more than 300 public meetings where he attended himself, and many more where his 3D projections were displayed, as well as in the BJP manifesto, it was promised that farmers' incomes would be doubled, farmers would be given at least 1.5 times more than the cost of production as the support price for their produce, as recommended by Swaminathan Commission. The inputs like seeds, fertilizers, etc., would be provided at subsidized rates cheaply to farmers. The crop loans would be given at low interest rates. And if there is a crop loss due to natural calamities or other reasons, then there would be crop insurance provided to the farmers. Har khet ko pani, water for every field, was another promise of the government. And it was also mentioned that there would be no forcible acquisition of land, no acquisition of land without the permission of the farmers and those dependent on land. In addition to the agriculture workers, it was promised that they would be provided at least 200 days of work and an increased with increased wages. So this naturally created a lot of enthusiasm in the rural areas, and that translated into votes for the BJP. And if you look at the election results, especially in Haryana and Maharashtra, where BJP has never come to power on its own, they managed to come to power in these two states with good backing of the agrarian classes. So that is in 2014. And in 2014, once they come to power, within a few days, we met the agriculture minister with the All India Kisan Sabha delegation and demanded that the promise of providing a minimum support price of at least 50% more than the cost of production should be implemented. It was their electoral promise. It was the promise made by Mr. Modi himself. The agriculture minister just laughed off and asked us why were we so serious about it. It's only an election time promise. It is only every political party makes promises to get votes, and it is only should be seen as such. Very soon, the BJP national president also made the statement that these are only Chunavi jumlas or election time jingles. And the Narendra Modi-led BJP government filed an affidavit in the Supreme Court that this cannot be implemented. So very soon into the first term of Narendra Modi-led BJP government, we find that they are showing signs that the promises made are going to be betrayed.
I'm
Am I
not audible.
audible?
Yes, you're
Now?
audible. It's a brief stuck.
Yeah. So the land acquisition ordinance was brought, which was against the BJP manifesto promise of having a land use plan and no acquisition of land without the prior informed consent of the farmers and the dependents on land. It was against this that the first protest started, and an issue-based unity was built with All India Kisan Sabha playing a major initiative that was called the Bhumi Adhikar Andolan, or the land rights movement, which revolved around the two issues of land and forest rights, as well as uh, against indiscriminate land acquisition or corporate land grab. Hundreds of organizations came together to form this issue-based unity, and with repeated struggles, it was the BJP government was forced to actually withhold these land acquisition ordinance. It could not be passed as acts in the parliament, though they tried it thrice, and they had to withdraw from it. So this issue-based unity led to the first defeat, probably, for the Narendra Modi-led BJP government, and they had to withdraw the land acquisition ordinance. Then came the 2016, you had the um, Notebandi, or the demonetization decision being taken. That added to the distress of the agriculture workers, the peasantry, as well as the working class in a big way. Initially, actually, at that time, on an independent manner, the All India Kisan Sabha was amidst a Kisan Sanghars rally. And November 24th, we had the first All India rally against the demonetization, as well as against the agrarian crisis and the betrayals of the government. But in 2017, you found a lot of, because the first 2 years, usually just after a government takes over, then there is not much protests happen. They give some time to the government. But post the demonetization, we find every section is in distress. So there were many protests rising, working class out in protest, the different groups of farmers out in protest. We saw the protests in Maharashtra, Rajasthan, Haryana, Punjab, Himachal. Literally every state had massive protests with the two demands of ensuring remunerative price for their produce and freedom from indebtedness. It is in the process of this struggle that you found in Mandsaur in Madhya Pradesh, when the farmers were demanding remunerative price for their crop, it was fired at by the BJP government, and six farmers were killed in the firing. What were their demands? They were asking for proper price for their produce. We visited their houses. They were not affiliated to All India Kisan Sabha or to any left political party or anything. They were all hardcore sympathizers and supporters of the BJP and the Sangh Parivar. We could still find flags of BJP on their houses. They had produced garlic. The cost of production per kg of garlic, according to the farmers, were 33 to 35 rupees a kg. According to the BJP government in the state, the cost of production of 1 kg of garlic was 27 rupees. Even if you take 27 rupees as the cost of production, then in a hectare, the farmer spends around 1.5 lakh as cost of cultivation, cost of production. And we find that in the Neemach market at that time, the wholesale market, the price was 1 rupee a kg that the farmer was getting. On the same day, Reliance Fresh was selling it at 147 rupees a kg. So here the farmers were actually asking to ensure that at least they get little more than their cost of production as the price for the produce. No intervention from the government, entirely like the present promise of big traders coming and helping farmers with better prices with that Narendra Modi is making. A similar situation existed there, that the farmers were being cheated or literally looted by the big traders. It is for demanding their rightful due that they were fired at and 6 farmers were shot dead. Post the Mandsaur incident, another issue-based unity was built called the All India Kisan Sangharsh Coordination Committee, only around 2 issues, that is ensuring assured remunerative price for the produce and freedom from indebtedness. More than 200 organizations of farmers came together. They might have differences on other issues, but on these 2 issues, they came together. In the course of struggles, we could also arrive at consensus on wider issues. For instance, some of the organizations initially were hesitant to take up issues about the Goraksha attacks and so-called Goraksha attacks, in which many were killed. But in the course of struggles, by the end of 2018, most of the organizations also started taking a position against these attacks which were going on, and in which more than 100, especially farmers from Muslim and Dalit communities, were killed. That consensus also emerged on wider set of issues. We had numerous struggles. You all have seen the Kisan Long March from Nasik to Mumbai, in which thousands marched more than 186 kilometers in 6 to 7 days, and forced the Maharashtra BJP government to accept all the 12 demands that they had put forward. This struggle saw an unprecedented solidarity emerging, with all sections coming out in support. You had the middle class, the workers, the dabbawalas, the Dalit chawls nearby coming out in support, and also small traders coming out in support, providing slippers and food for the marchers who had marched more than 186 kilometers. So that is also something which we had never seen before, a new kind of solidarity emerging. It was visible also in the Rajasthan struggles, especially in Sikar, where all sections, including auto drivers, traders, and working class, middle class, all of them coming in solidarity with the farmers. Naturally, it was an outpouring of the general discontent that existed in the society because of the distress created by the notebandi, the demonetization, and the GST related decisions. So in 2018, we had 3 important protest actions. First was the 9th August, on the anniversary of Quit India movement, a jail baro in which workers and farmers, agriculture workers, and also for the first time, the retired Jawans came out in support of this, in which more than 5 lakh people took part in this jail baro movement, with the slogan that Kisan Virodhi, BJP Modi, Gaddi Chodo. The anti-farmer BJP and Narendra Modi should quit from the seat of power. That is with that slogan. And on September 5th, we had a massive Mazdoor Kisan Sangharsh rally in which more than 2 lakh farmers, agriculture workers, and workers joined in Delhi. And in my almost 3 decades of activism, I have not seen that kind of a protest in which more than 2 lakh farmers, agriculture workers, and workers joined together. In the post the Mandsaur incident, continuous struggles by the All India Kisan Sangharsh Coordination Committee and different parliament marches, a Kisan parliament in Delhi, in which from amidst the struggles, for the first time probably in our history, that 2 bills were prepared, and these bills were presented in the parliament as private member bills. One demanding assured remunerative price and procurement, and another demanding. These bills remain in the parliament. Now we see that 3 new bills have come in 2020 July without any mention about the earlier proposals which came from farmers themselves. But these struggles also led to some electoral reverses for the BJP in some of the states like Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Rajasthan, and so on. And generally, there was an imprint in the minds of the peasantry, BJP Modi Kisan Virodhi. We also find many other promises like the Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana, the insurance policy, in which huge premiums are collected from the state, the farmers, and from the central governments by big corporate insurance companies. And we find every year these companies were making huge profits, thousands of crores of profits. Even the CAG has mentioned about this, while the farmers are not getting any compensation when their crop loss happens due to some natural calamities or other reasons. So this is also, it is interesting to note, Narendra Modi's home state of Gujarat and Madhya Pradesh, both BJP ruled states are now planning to go out of this Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. In such circumstances, instead of doubling farmers' incomes, what we found is actually only the woes of farmers were doubled. Farmers' suicides continued unabated. In 6 years, in the last 6 years, every year, according to the conservative figures, more than 12,000 farmers are committing suicide. Those who are indebted and in distress have been committing suicide. Farmers are not getting the remunerative price. All of a sudden, just before the 2019 elections, a little before the 2019 elections, the Modi government announced that we are already giving 50% more than the cost of production. I would like to bring to your notice some issues, some figures regarding this. What was promised was C2 plus 50. That is all the comprehensive costs incurred by the farmers plus 50% was promised. If you look for wheat, the MSP announced is 1925 per quintal. Had it been C2 plus 50, as per the Commission on Agriculture Costs and Prices calculations, then it should have been something like 2,140 rupees. Had it been according to the state government projections of C2 plus 50, it should have been something like 2,772 rupees per quintal. Such huge gaps are there. In terms of calculation of these prices also, there are a lot of problems that exist, which farmers have been pointing out time and again. And we all know that procurement is also not effective everywhere. So only in wheat and paddy, at least to some extent, that there is procurement in states like Haryana, Punjab, parts of Madhya Pradesh, West UP, and so on. In many of the parts of India, even the minimum support price announced is only notional, as there is no procurement. It is only on paper, as there is no procurement that happens. So here, one more instance which I would like to mention is, if you take the case of Bihar or Jharkhand, Odisha, etc., while minimum support price for paddy is 1868 per quintal, the farmers there, since there is no, especially Bihar, Jharkhand, etc., where there is no public procurement, neither are there the regulated markets. It is directly the traders who are buying from farmers. There they are getting only anything between 800 to 1,200 only, because they are forced to make distress sales. In fact, yesterday, an old student of JNU who is entirely into farming in Navada district of Bihar was telling me that he managed to get 1,300 rupees per quintal, while the minimum support price is 1868. in most parts, it is much lesser that they are getting. If, a state like Kerala is providing 27.50 per quintal and procuring paddy from the farmers. So in such a circumstance, you had a betrayal of most of the promises. The hope that was generated by Mr. Modi in 2014 was belied in a big way. There was promises of 2 crore employment for youth every year, but we find in 45 years the highest unemployment rate. Farmers' suicides, I already mentioned, increase in malnutrition in a big way, very dangerous proportions in some states like Maharashtra, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh, Odisha, and so on. And but in 2019, BJP and Mr. Modi manages to win the election again in a much bigger way. Post the Pulwama Balakot incidents and ultra-nationalist campaign that went into it after that, and also the use of the corporate media in North India, known more as the Godi media, and huge expenses with the help from the corporate cronies in the elections. And just before election, the government announces a Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi, where 6,000 rupees per hectare is promised to all farmers. And the first installment of that comes into the farmers' accounts even on the day of the polling. So the election commission's role and all that is there. It is in such a circumstance that they again win, and also the disarray in the opposition ranks that they could not put up a fight is also a matter to be noted. They win the elections in a much bigger way. But if you see 2019 till now, there is an economic recession kind of situation, big increase in unemployment, jobs lost in textile industry, more than 30 lakh people losing job. In automobile industry, more than 10 lakh people losing job, and so on. So this has been happening. It is in such circumstance, and also profit-making public sector undertakings being privatized in a big way during this period. It is in such circumstance that the pandemic struck. And even when the pandemic struck, for almost 3 months after the first instance of coronavirus disease in Wuhan, though there were enough warnings from the Food and Agriculture Organization, the World Health Organization, etc., that it could lead to a big crisis, increased unemployment, and also poverty, food crisis, and so on. Almost 3 months went into just trying to create a communal polarization around the Citizenship Amendment Act, the Article 370, and so on. And we all know how the protests against these policies, these decisions, were met with, repressed in a big way by the government. It is only, and in between, when the whole world was talking about a physical distancing to resist the COVID-19 spread, we had the Namaste Trump, a mega event in Ahmedabad, where they claimed that few lakh people assembled to receive Donald Trump. And an elected government in Madhya Pradesh was resorting to horse, the BJP was resorting to horse trading and other attempts to overturn the electoral mandate. It is only on 22nd March that the Janta curfew was announced, and with the Prime Minister asking people to bang plates and express appreciation for the health workers and sanitation staff. And on 24th, the lockdown was announced without any consultation with state governments, which are in the forefront of building resistance to the pandemic, or with political parties, and with not much notice to the general public. When the lockdown was announced, the Indian farmers were expecting a bumper harvest. especially in the north where wheat is cultivated in a big way. About compared to last year, about 11% increase in acreage of wheat was there. So they were expecting a bumper harvest. But if you look at the manner in which lockdown was imposed, how post the partition, you had the biggest exodus of people where millions had to march from their places of work to their hometowns or to their villages, left to fend for themselves. So there was a harvesting crisis and a marketing crisis that happened. In the first 23 days of lockdown, if you compare with the last year, only 6% of the wheat arrivals last year, only 6% of that had arrived in the markets in the first 23 days. So there was huge losses for farmers because even if family labor was used for harvest, they couldn't transport it to the markets. Even if they managed to transport it to market, no buyers, and this kind of a situation. Every crop suffered. Horticultural crops in a big way, vegetables and fruits and flowers, perishables suffer. Farmers cultivating these crops suffered in a big way. Grape farmers in Maharashtra alone are said to have suffered over 1,000 crore loss. The dairy farmers, milk rates reduced in a big way, about 10 to 15 rupees per liter. And you also had poultry farmers who were getting about 80 to 90 rupees per live bird, being forced to sell at anything between 20 to 25 rupees only. So every section suffered income losses. Farmers, agriculture labor, the working class. And now the figures that are coming, initially the figures were saying about 12 crore people lost their jobs. And Professor Arun Kumar and others say it should be anything over 20 crore. So that required a more sensitive approach from the central government. The central, we as organization of farmers, along with the different organizations of agriculture, labor, and the working class, had demanded at least an income support of 7,500 rupees per month to all non-tax paying poor people of our country. Food security, not just rice or wheat, but also a food kit like in Kerala, where all essentials that a family require in a month are given. Kerala has been doing it throughout the entire lockdown period. That is not happening in other states. I think that people who are listening to me from Kerala have to understand that. With income losses, with no such support from the governments, in either the central government or most state governments, is the situation that the people have been in. We also demanded loan waiver for farmers, NREGA, at least 200 days of work at 600 rupees per day. If no work, then unemployment wage of at least 300 rupees. But none of these was acceptable to the BJP government. Whereas while they refused to waive the loans of farmers, about 68,000 crores of loans of willful defaulters like Mehul Choksi, Malya, Nirav Modi's, and also people like Ramdev and others have been done during the lockdown period. There was no demand for the kind of acts that were pushed through the parliament from the grassroots. The grassroots demands, I already mentioned, the two bills were placed in the parliament. All of a sudden, without any relief for the large section of peasantry and the agriculture labor or working class, the government comes up with 3 ordinances in the first week of June and makes the atrocious claim that when India gained one independence of freedom in 1947, Indian farmers did not get freedom. And it is Mr. Narendra Modi who in June 2020 has given freedom to farmers to sell anywhere they want. So one of the act which is brought here in simple terms, in Hindi we use that Mandi Todo Corporate Loot Badao Kanun. That is, you have very long, attractive names. This government has a penchant for naming very attractively different projects. You have even the most adverse, most anti-farmer bills would have a very attractive name. The Farmers Produce Trade and Commerce Promotion and Facilitation Act. That is the so this essentially is to try and do away with the regulated markets, which have been in most states from 1960s. The Agriculture Produce Marketing Committees and the APMC Act, repeatedly different governments, I'm not saying it's just the BJP government, earlier Congress governments also have tried to dilute the APMC Act and tried to pressurize the states to either do away with all the restrictions in the APMCs. Now, like Siddiq mentioned before, going entirely against the federal rights of states, agriculture being a state subject, without any consultation with the state governments, these acts are being brought. APMCs had come into being initially to ensure at least some level playing field. Otherwise, the big traders were literally exploiting the peasantry and not giving proper price for their produce. So with regulated markets, with some government control, some dispute mechanism, and so on, there was at least a semblance of level playing field that was sought to be created. That is being, and we are not saying there were no problems, but the government is resorting to throwing the baby with the bathwater. What was required was to strengthen the different mechanism which would protect the farmers' interests and ensure that they are not cheated. But instead, now the government is claiming that the farmers' produce would be bought directly by the big companies and farmers would get good price. That is Adani's, Ambani's, Birla's, Tata's, ITC, Walmart and Pepsi will give our farmers better price than what they are getting now. That is the claim. I did mention earlier about the case of the garlic farmers in Madhya Pradesh. I also gave you the example of Bihar, where in 2006 the APMCs were done away with. The farmers in Bihar have not seen big corporates coming and giving them better prices. They have only further exploited the farmers. That is the situation. Now, the second act, it is something this protest is not just of farmers. It is a protest where each one of you have to be part of it. The Essential Commodities Act, brought in 1950s, was to ensure that there is no hoarding and black marketing. What is happening with the Essential Commodities Act Amendment Act? The rice, wheat, different pulses, oil seeds, potato, onion, all these essentials are no longer, literally it renders them as no longer essential commodities. So you can hoard how much ever you want. There is no control. Whatever is the installed capacity of these big agri-businesses, that can be retained even in times of famine, in times of food insecurity, in times of war. That is the kind of an act which has been brought in. They say, the government says that if there is a price rise, they can intervene. Yes, there is a clause included which says quite vaguely, without clarifying how much, from when the price rise would be looked into and all. It says that if there is 100% rise in price of horticultural goods and 50% rise in crop, the non-perishable price, then the government can intervene. So this is also to promote in a big way hoarding and black marketing. It is going to lead to huge rise in prices for essential commodities for you and me and every toiling Indian. So that is what is going to happen with this. Uh, you also should note some things. For instance, in 2014, after the BJP government had come to power, you had a situation where arhar dal, in also in some places known as tuar dal, the market consumers had to pay up to 220 rupees a kg. The farmers at that time in Gulbarga, northern Karnataka, which is one of the centers of arhar or tuar cultivation, were getting anything between 35 to 40 rupees a kg. But consumers were paying 180 rupees more. Even if you take 40 rupees a kg, 180 rupees more in the market to get a kilo of arhar dal. So here, usual argument is if there is a higher price given to the farmers, then it leads to price rise. But you see the margin of profit that some of these companies are making. That is the case with many other produce. I can bring an n number of examples to prove my case in that. The third act is again, you have a very attractive name. If you read the name, one would feel, why are the farmers opposed to it? It says the farmers empowerment and protection agreement of price assurance and farm services act. So it talks about farmers empowerment, farmers protection, an agreement of price assurance. That price assurance is also there, and also it provides farm services. But to put in simple terms, this is only Corporate Contract Farming Act. One must note one thing: in the last almost 10 years, different governments have been trying to push state governments to pass model contract farming acts, model tenancy act, and as well as model APMC act. None of these, there has been resistance at the state level earlier. And now through these acts, central government is trying to centralize all powers in its hands against the federal rights of the states, and at the same time removing all controls over the big corporate companies. That is what is planned through these three acts. Are these three acts something which emerged suddenly in the midnight in the minds of Narendra Modi? These are some things which have been continuously pressurized. India has been pressurized in the WTO. Professor Indranath Mukherjee, if he is listening, he will stand by me that continuously the countries like United States, European Union have been pressurizing India to cut food subsidies, agriculture subsidies, and also to withdraw from public procurement. Now, these three acts are, these points were also articulated by the Shanta Kumar Commission, former BJP leader who headed a commission which came with recommendations that FCI should be privatized. This storage facilities, procurement, all that should be privatized. It also, for states like Kerala, importantly, it also said any state giving bonus over and above the minimum support price, from there the center should not procure. So these kind of recommendations. Now, it is this set of policy acts which have come are actually taking forward the neoliberal agenda in a much more aggressive way. The Corporate Contract Farming Act, we have innumerable examples from India and abroad where the small farmers have literally been at the mercy of the corporate companies. For my PhD, I looked into the contract farming in Kuppam, Chittoor district in Andhra Pradesh, where the then Chief Minister, Chandrababu Naidu, had brought in a contract farming, a Israeli-American company called VHC Agro, paying huge subsidies for the fertigation and drip irrigation system to the literally the farmers initially got 100% subsidy, trying to induce them into the contract farming system. And what was grown? They were growing millets or paddy in those areas. They were asked to grow gherkins. If I take a poll here, how many know what gherkins are? I am sure not more than 10 or 15% would know what gherkins are. They are not consumed by the poor in India. They are not consumed by the middle class in India, maybe in the super rich, and or an entirely export-oriented crop that is cultivated there. Initially, it did get better prices for farmers. Gradually, they ended up losing their lands. So that is what happened there. Here also, a similar situation is going to emerge. I would like to bring to your notice an interesting document called the Karnataka Integrated Agri-Business Development Plan. They don't have an integrated agriculture development plan, but the BJP government of Yediyurappa, the earlier government, not the present one, brought this policy which says lands of farmers could be taken over up to 2,000 acres. And what would happen? There would be agri-tourism on those lands. What would you have? There would be agri-tourism where people from abroad or cities could come and stay there in comfortable, luxurious cottages. There would be few farmers who would cultivate land. There would be agriculture workers and farmers cultivating land. And there was an added attraction. There could be bullock cart riding and feeding of cows and goats. This is written in the Integrated Agri-Business Development Plan of Karnataka. So this is the vision that this government seems to be having for the farmers and agriculture labor of our country. So the farmers have recognized it. The Prime Minister is now claiming that often in Hindi that kisanon ko gumrah kiya gaya. The farmers have been misled. Actually, the farmers have understood that these acts are at the behest of the Adanis and Ambanis of our country. If you look into it, the acts have been passed only in, the ordinances came in June 2020, but it looks like Adani knew that Adani could preempt this, because from 2014 to 2020, in many places, huge silos are being constructed, and they are having understanding with the Food Corporation of India. That is something which has been happening. Farmers have recognized this. That is why this kind of a resistance has been built. We gave a call for the Delhi Chalo on November 26th and 27th. Before that itself, these ordinances were burnt in thousands of places in across the country, with workers and farmers coming together. The All India Kisan Sangharsh Coordination Committee had many protests. Mind you, all these are during the COVID pandemic, during a very restrictive lockdown in many states, and the fear of the disease stalking that these protests have happened. People realize that their livelihoods, the future generations, are threatened by it. That is why the clear realization has also led to this call for boycott Adani's and Ambani products. That is not a call given by any leadership of any of these organizations. That has come from the farmers from below itself. Now it is forcing Adanis and Ambanis to come out with clarifications how they are not into contract farming, they are not against farmers' interests, and so on. But uh, we know, the farmers know that these are only crocodile tears. And when we marched to Delhi on 26th, the working class also had a countrywide strike. More than 26 crore workers are said to have participated in that. On the same day, in other parts of India, we had a Gramin Bharat Hartal also on the same day, where farmers organizations, agriculture workers organizations came together and gave such a call. And we all saw how, when the peaceful procession towards Delhi in tractors, how the government reacted to it, as though at the borders between two warring nations, huge trenches were dug, national highways were dug up, not by some anti-social elements, by the central government, by the BJP-led government, using big JCB and other equipments. Water cannon was used, tear gas and chili grenades were used on the farmers. Overcoming all that, thousands and thousands of farmers have been camping at different borders of Delhi. Protests are going on in other parts of the country also. The Singhu border, Tikri border, Ghazipur, Palwal, and Shahjahanpur border between Rajasthan and Haryana on the Delhi-Jaipur highway, all are witnessing thousands and thousands of people there. In the last more than a month, more than 50 farmers have become martyrs in this struggle. This government has still continued to remain insensitive, almost like Emperor Nero fiddling when Rome was burning. You have the Prime Minister, different time, his own positions are also similar to that. 7 rounds of talks have gone on. They are still sticking to the same set of demands. Tomorrow, we are planning for a tractor rally through the Kundli Manesar Palwal outer ring road of Delhi. We have planned our actions for the entire this January, if required, to go ahead. If the government is not willing to withdraw these 3 acts, as well as the amendments to the Electricity Act, which would reduce subsidies, lead to huge increase in irrigation costs for farmers and electricity costs for common people, the struggle is going to go on. The farmers have said, we will not withdraw from here until and unless these acts are repealed. We have planned now from 7th onwards till 20th, a series of campaign activities across the country, distribution of leaflets, public meetings, and so on. On 18th, we are observing a Mahila Kisan Day across the country. And from 23rd, that is Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose Day, till 26th, we will have massive sit-in, day and night sit-in in front of the Raj Bhavans, the governor's offices across the country. And on 26th, after the official function of the government, Republic Day function, after that, without any disruption in the official function, a worker peasant parade across the country, Mazdoor Kisan parade, will also be held. These set of plan already we have done. I would like to bring to your notice, as I'm talking to you, the last 6 days we have had heavy rain in Delhi. The temperatures have gone down on some days almost to 1 degree. People are out on the streets, and the government is prolonging this without trying to arrive at a resolution of the problems. So we require much more active solidarity from all of you, people who can write about the policies, why the farmers are out on protest, how to also expose the anti-farmer nature of the government, and those who are in a position to come actually be part of the protests wherever they are happening. It is a historic protest that is going on, a very steely resolve among the farmers of our country. They have come prepared with their all provisions and um, with the entire families in many cases, and they are camping at different borders of Delhi. We are sure that this united struggle, in fact, it has to be noted, 2 days back, some journalist was asking me, who is the leader of this struggle? I said, it is a collective movement. There is no one single leader of the struggle. If you say who is the actual leader, it is our farmers and the workers who are the leaders of this movement. The same lockdown period, as people were kept under lockdown, the gates were unlocked for corporate loot. We saw how workers' rights are being trampled upon, how the hard-won right of 8 hours of work, 8 hours of leisure, and no cut in pay now is being increased to 12 hours of work, and all labor rights are being withdrawn. So there is a need for a united struggle, a need for uniting around an alternative, a pro-people alternative that will talk about universal health, universal education, universal public distribution system, social security, and democratic rights of all people would be respected. I think that is the direction in which we have to go. And this struggle is a milestone as far as democratic movement, present movement in our country is concerned. Thank you all for giving me this opportunity to speak on these issues. I'm sure with the support of all of you, this united movement will emerge victorious, and the government will have to bow down to the desires of the peasantry. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vijoo, for such a wonderful presentation. And now I would like to invite Aparna to handle the question as well as your comments regarding this. I think we can take a few questions, right, Comrade Vijoo?
Okay. Thank you, Siddiq. There are a couple of questions in the chat box. I'll read it to Comrade Vijoo. And he can respond either one by one or take it collectively as he please. The first question here is by Kashish Kakka. He says, good evening, sir. Sir, will the farm bills help bring private investments into agriculture? Could you please throw some light on this? Should I read out all the questions, or would you like to take one by one?
You read out all.
Okay. And the next question is by Kashish Bharatwaj, who says, good evening, sir. Will the government still have a role in controlling the commodity prices? Vijayshri Aram has a question where she asks, do you think farm sector privatization will result eventually in the long run as the government reports persist on this?
No, once again, that question.
Okay, I repeat. Do you think farm sector privatization will result eventually in the long run as the government reports persist on this? That's what she's written.
Okay. I think I get that. Okay.
And there's one more question by Sharon Jose, who has asked, sir, how will these farm bills affect a consumerist state like Kerala? Those are the questions which are currently here. I'll update you if it comes.
This question that Kashish has asked, will farm bills help bring private investment? Yes, in a way, if you allow total freedom for the corporate companies to hoard and also decide the prices of produce with no control from the government, it is likely, it is a avenue for profiteering at the expense of people for the uh, big corporate agribusinesses. So it is likely to bring in investment, but whether any kind of investment is to be seen as pro people, whether it is going to help the people, whether it is going to help the farmers, that is the test of these policies. I think there very clearly these policies are against the interest of the farmers. That is to be noted. Already, if you look at whether private investment is coming, if Adani Agri Logistics is investing, surely if they are setting up something, they must be investing something. But such investments are in any way going to help the farmers. That is to be noted. What is required? We have been asking for an increase in the network of markets, agricultural markets, um, great, quicker and easier access to them for farmers, so that they are not at far off distances. That is required. And the governments, not just central government, the state governments should also invest in this. Other than that, we also feel uh, cooperatives and self-help groups and such bodies also should be involved in procurement, in storage and um, processing, value addition, marketing, and such activities. This is the government's efforts are totally in the opposite direction. We are not having a position that there should be no private involvement at all. But this is a total clean, a blank check to the corporate agribusinesses. Will government still have a role in controlling commodity prices? Uh, on paper, yes, some role would be there, but in effect, they wouldn't be doing much. That is the earlier case of pulses, which I mentioned. If the government wanted, they could have brought some price control, but that was not happening, because the beneficiary is, are who are the beneficiaries, biggest sellers of pulses? Adanis, Ambanis, Tatas, Birlas, ITC, all of them are into selling pulses and such produce. So their role in controlling prices, especially with this Essential Commodities Act, the amendments being brought also, it is going to be almost very nominal. Do you think farm sector privatization, as government is sticking to the, I think the government wants to bring in corporates in a big way into agriculture. That is the direction in which they are going ahead. That is why these bills have also come. So whether there will be in a big way privatization that, or private investment that will come. The first question also was addressing the same aspects. As far as the farmers are concerned, we have given an open challenge to the government. We have called for repealing of these acts, but let them try implementing it without the consent of the farmers. We will resist it on the ground. There will be a peaceful resistance built against such systems which will lead to a situation where the farmers are going to be exploited. That is, this movement has very clearly shown that how we have had very interesting modes of protest, toll-free movement across different national and state highways in many places. The toll gates have also emerged as a major earning of incomes, huge incomes by many of the corporate companies. Against that, there has been this movement. Boycott of Adani Ambani products in a big way that is happening. Many people giving up geo connection and so on in a big way. So the movement has thrown up some innovative modes of protest. We are confident that these efforts of the government can be resisted effectively. The fourth question, can you repeat once again? Or
Can. It is by Sharon Jose.
yeah.
She has asked you, how will these farm bills affect a consumerist state like Kerala?
Yeah. How will it affect Kerala? Kerala, you see, even paddy, we are a deficit in rice. So we buy from other states. And with this kind of these three bills, let us take the Contract Farming Act itself. It would lead to shifting in cropping patterns. Usually, we have seen earlier there was another effort to bring in this contract farming earlier in the name of public-private partnership for integrated agricultural development. There also, that up to 2,000 acres or more can be pooled together by farmers, and corporate companies would decide what to grow on that. This was tried by the earlier UPA government, Congress-led UPA government, the second UPA government, and there all the requisitions by different corporate companies were mostly for non-food crops, the so-called commercial crops, or export-oriented crops. So this is going to hit the food security in our country. That is one thing. And these the Essential Commodity Act amendments, the huge storages that are there, the installed capacity. I mentioned earlier that even when there is a shortage here, the installed capacity cannot be tampered with. Adanis have enough agro processing industry in countries like Bangladesh and other places. They can even, in such circumstance, shift these crops to these countries. So this is going to lead to increased costs. Consumer has to pay higher prices, and states like Kerala, which are dependent on other states for their food grain needs and much of their agricultural needs, are also going to be affected in a big way.
Couple more questions have come up. I should read it out. Ranjit Kumar Kesi has asked, till now, government has shown no signs of yielding to the demands of the farmers. How long do you think the farmers will be able to go on with the strike? Another question by Parvati Naya. She writes, APMC mandis are also existing simultaneously with the current reform. Does it increase the choice of the farmers? Then how the law become adversely affect farmers?
Okay, I got it.
Krishna Kumar is right.
Krishna Kumar is my old friend from JNU, I think.
Oh, yeah. He has asked, an ecological angle has been added in the current scene. Certain policy circles, including issues like groundwater overuse. What counter challenge does the farmers' movement look to put forward towards upholding sustainable practices? Abhilash KB says, sir, first of all, a big salute to one and all who are part of this historical protest, even facing various adversities, including bad weather. I think this protest is still cornered only as an issue of farmers. To the mass common people, still they are not aware about the threat of withdrawal of essential commodities list and its impact on the consumer states due to hoarding, etc. Kindly comment on this fact and the role political parties and NGOs can play in creating a mass protest. And the last question, which I think would be the final question we'll be taking tonight. It's by Edwin Joy, who writes in, Comrade, in future, how these policies are going to affect public distribution system?
Yeah, one question which was asked about how long this struggle and no signs of yielding. We are prepared for the long haul. I think that message should be very clear to the government. The farmers have come prepared. They have braved the biting cold, and like I mentioned, last 6 days, heavy rains. They are still on the streets. No, not a single farmer has decided to go back. So this struggle is going to go on until the government repeals these acts. It may be a long drawn struggle. That realization is there among the farmers. That is where also the support and solidarity of other sections of society is very important to ensure that a quicker resolution of this issue is there. And such actions, some actions are being planned. The last question also I will about the role, about why it is only farmers, only portrayed as farmers issue and not others are not coming out in big way. Actually, it is, I mentioned earlier also that workers have come out in big way in support of the farmers, literally being part of it's not just issuing some statements or solidarity meetings and so on. They are part of many of these protests that are happening. And other than that, what role could the political parties play? I think political parties here, this is a protest which the different organizations of farmers have built up. Political parties in their own ways, in different assemblies, different also in parliament when it comes, they have been playing some role. When the bills were being passed, also around 8 MPs were suspended for protesting against the undemocratic manner in which. So they have been playing a part in raising objection to the manner in which it was passed, also creating awareness about what is the problem with these acts. In some of the states, they have also come with resolutions against the 3 farm acts, asserting the federal rights of states. Different states have come up with that. Some states have come with acts which would ensure that these acts would not be implementable in those states. That has happened. Even the state of Kerala is contemplating bringing an alternative set of alternative legislation which would showcase the alternative agriculture policy also. That is in the pipeline. About APMC mandis, whether it will not increase the choice. APMC mandis will be there. That is the argument the BJP government has been talking. Again and again, why farmers are so worried, mandis will remain. But as of now, in the mandis, there is the traders who are coming in need to pay a tax, a mandi tax. There is some kind of restrictions which are there. The government role is there, regulation is there. But when there is an option of going direct to the farmers without paying any tax, the mandi tax. One is the state is being denied a lot of revenue also in that way from the big corporate companies by doing away with the having to pay tax. And the other thing is, why will they come to the APMC mandis where they have to pay a tax, when they can go directly and buy from the farmer? So that is the situation. Where there would be, yes, APMCs would, on paper, would remain, or those establishments would remain, but in a gradual manner, the total buying of agricultural produce would shift to these big corporate companies. It is also the government is going to slowly withdraw from public procurement. That is also something, though it is not stated in any of these. The Prime Minister has been telling that MSP will also be, it would be given in writing that MSP will continue. But this MSP, what we are saying is it is not available to farmers in most crops. It is not in most states also, there is no procurement at MSP. That is about ecological issues. There have been questions. Farmers are as much concerned about environment and sustainable agriculture. There is no two opinions on that. Yes, there is excess use of groundwater, excessive use of chemical fertilizers, and such things also lead to some issues. Those are no way linked to these facts. Those have to be addressed at a different level altogether. There, I think proper extension services, which also have been dismantled over the last 30 years in a big way, better agronomic practices, which would lead to conservation of water and soil quality, that has to be disseminated in a big way to the farmers. In our own way, we have, as organizations of farmers, we have also been intervening with our huge membership base that we have in taking forward some such policies.
Hello, Comrade Vijoo, I have a question.
Yes, 1 minute.
May I request you to type it out, please? Also, we are running out of time.
Okay, Comrade Vijoo, please.
You're muted.
Hello. Hello.
Let him ask.
Hello.
Yeah.
Okay.
Comrade Vijoo, please explain what is your expectation about the outcome of this strike. We are all optimistic, but we want to hear from you.
We in our university days, we have a slogan: "The people united shall always be victorious." We are confident we will win, and the support has been growing. This question that was asked about the role of others in this movement.
Yes.
Today evening, I had attended a meeting of a solidarity group called Nation for Farmers. In every state, they are also having chapters which are trying to build support for this movement. More farmers are coming to Delhi. In the coming, within a week's time, you are having farmers coming from Kerala to Delhi, about 500 farmers in the first batch, about 300 farmers from Bengal are coming, from Gujarat, with braving a lot of repression in Gujarat. They had to, many of them had to disguise and come up to the borders of Rajasthan. From Udaipur, they had to come in. They have come and joined the protest. From Odisha today, a group of about 5 people have come. More are coming, and they have all come with the preparation to sit here as long as required. So let us see. Let Mr. Modi and his team try all they have in their armor. We will also face it as it comes.
Comrade Vijoo, there is one more question, and to be fair to her, Chantini PC Senin has asked, as agriculture being a state list of the 7th schedule of the Constitution, can union government make such an act without the consultation of the state? Even if such a law were brought, can't judiciary do anything?
Actually, ideally, the judiciary should have just struck down these acts, because you have rightly mentioned that it is under the state list that agriculture comes. Here, violating the federal rights of states, they are totally concentrating powers of the central government to change the entire marketing system in our country, to open up the lands of farmers for corporate contract farming, and also for hoarding and black marketing, whatever unlimited quantities, because these companies, the silos that they are building are so huge, and it can store a lot of grains in these silos. So it is very clearly against the interests of the state governments. Different state governments, different chief ministers are also trying to bring a concerted opposition to this. As far as the judiciary's role, I think the less said the better. There's a poem by Mayakovsky, an ode to the judges. So you should, if some of you can find it, you should read it. What the judges have done to our land, the kind of the manner in which the different protesters have been dealt with. You see the manner in which Arnab Goswamis are given relief, whereas someone like who has been part of democratic protests, who have been involved with social service for many years, how they are dealt with. We had to, for a glass with a sipper for a senior citizen of our country, a big campaign had to be done. That is when you have a judiciary here. It is, I think, in such a circumstance, because some of us, we were initially whether we should go to court, go to the Supreme Court. But the Supreme Court has lost a lot of confidence of the people, I think, over the last few years. That is why even before, on the issue of the minimum support price, on the issue of NREGA and so on, we have different organizations have gone to court, but the court has not intervened in favor of the farmers. So that is our experience. I hope they prove me wrong.
Comrade Vijoo, I have a important point, because MSP and the importance of procurement as a legal right is one of the argument of the farmers, and how that is very important in this context need to be reflected, because the audience may not be very much aware of all that. So this is also a very crucial point as far as. So
yeah, I will just MSP. It is not MSP as the central government is now announcing. I will just give you. I have been attending the meetings of the Commission on Agriculture Costs and Prices from 2009 onwards. This determines this actually advises the central government on the MSP of different crops. MSP of around 24 crops, if you take Jowar hybrid and the other variety, and paddy A grade and paddy common, like that, almost 24 crops, the MSP is announced. And only copra is the only commercial crop of Kerala that features in that. But let us take the example of wheat, for instance. How do they calculate the costs? There are different costs, A2 plus FL, that is all paid out costs and family labor. And there is the C2 costs. C2 costs, all comprehensive costs, including the issue of rent and such other investments that go into, everything is calculated. So if you take the C2 cost of wheat according to CACP, it is 1,425 per quintal. This is the CACP calculation. If you take the A2 plus FL cost, it is 923 only. So almost 500 rupees less than the C2 cost of the CACP. If you take the state government projection, it is 1848 per quintal is the C2 cost. That is exactly 50%. That is 923 is the A2 plus FL. You add another 925, then that is the C2 cost if you take the state government projections. But the state government projections are just, it is, only state governments can come and say this is our cost of production. The CACP just rejects it. Then it takes the A2 plus FL, which already is much below the C2 costs. The weighted average is taken. So let us say the cost of cultivation in Kerala is 2,000 rupees per quintal, and the cost of cultivation in, say, Uttarakhand is 1,000 rupees a quintal. The weighted average is taken as 1,500. So the Kerala farmer already loses 500 rupees lower is treated as the cost of production there. And a small increase is made over and above that, and that is announced as A2 plus FL plus 50% is being given. But what we have been demanding is computing correctly the costs and C2 plus 50. That is what we have been demanding. But if you see the minimum support price that is being announced for different crops, except for paddy and wheat, and with some exceptions for instance, some pulses, some of the oil seeds which are procured in some states, most other crops, there is almost zero procurement. So what we are saying is there should be assured procurement. The bill that we had placed in Parliament from amidst the struggles had insisted on assured procurement and remunerative cost according to C2 plus 50%. The government is not willing to do that. That was a promise of Modi. It is based on Swaminathan Commission recommendation, Narendra Modi's 2014 election promise, BJP's 2014 election promise is what we are demanding. And that as a legal right. That is not there in any of these acts. So when you say, one of our farmer leaders from Tamil Nadu used to say in Tamil that children are asking the uncle for sugar and sweets. The uncle just writes on a piece of paper, chakkare, or sugar or sweet, and gives it to the children. It is meaningless for the children. Chini chakkare chittappa, eitile ezhdi nakkappa. That the MSP for most of the crops is something like that. It is only on paper and very notional for a large section of farmers. So that has to be, it has to be ensured that the costs are calculated properly, and the inflation in that is the increase in costs of inputs, labor charges, all that has to be taken into account, and accordingly a price has to be fixed, and farmers should get that. So that is a demand which we have put forward. Only if that can be ensured, this cycle of indebtedness that is going on for many years will end, and farm suicides could be reduced in a major way. I hope I have addressed.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Please, Aparna.
May I quickly thank you formally. Thank you, Dr. Vijoo Krishnan, for that brilliant presentation and for bringing with so much clarity, using statistics, using evidence, examples, even slogans used by farmers to make us understand what are the real issues that farmers are battling with, especially since there is so much noise around the issue, literal banging of the plates, but not real engagement. In December, when Cochin Collective was in talks in collaboration with Dr. Siddiq of Inter-University Center for Alternative Economics, we were thinking of how we as a research community can stand up for our responsibility towards fellow citizens. And we wanted somebody who would amplify the voices of the farmers, as well as stand with them in solidarity. And I'm so pleased to say that today's talk is a testimony to how right we were in the decision to approach you for a talk. And we are extremely grateful that you accepted our request. Thank you for systematically dismantling the so-called idea put forward by the corporate media that this is the protests that are happening is a one-off, isolated outburst, which are limited to certain sections. Thank you for showing how there are multiple solidarities that have come up, the history of betrayals in the BJP government, under the BJP government, and how there is a history also of resistance by farmers, which forms a prelude to the ongoing protests. And we as researchers are keenly looking forward to the new modalities of protest that are emerging, especially looking at how the government is so stumped by the fact that this is a group of protests who are so steely in their resolve, who is receiving so much love and who's being well fed by the love of the comrades and the langar, the community offering langar. More power to you, more power to the protesters. And I would like to quickly thank all the participants and the staff and students of IUCA, because you were exactly what we were hoping for in today's talk. Comrade Vijoo's earlier talks were known for disruptions. So I would like to thank Dr. Matthew Verghese for taking up with gusto the gatekeeping administrative duties for the day. Let me conclude by thanking Dr. Vijoo Krishnan once again, and with the hope that the more than 12,000 farmers who were pushed to suicide, the 57 farmers who protesters who have died recently, none of this will go in vain, and that the government will finally see some sense, come back to their senses, and honor the demands of the protesters, and stand with honor the demands of those who literally feed the nation. Thank you once again, and good night, everyone. And thank you, Dr. Siddiq, and thank you, comrade.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. So thank you, Comrade Vijoo. Thank you, and on behalf of IUCA and all of us, thank you very much.
Okay.
See you, Comrade.
See you.